Hello brewers and welcome back to Dudes Brews. Today I've got a very special episode where I'm going to be looking at another brand new developmental hop from Charles Faram. This is CF383. So I've previously done a video where myself and the guys from the Hop Edition got to test out another developmental hop from Charles Faram, which was CF382. I'll pop the link up to that video in the corner. This time round, we have been really lucky to be sent not one, not two, but 4 brand new varieties between us that we are going to be testing out and doing a tasting on a podcast with a couple of the guys from Charles Faram and Martin Rake from the Malt Miller, who has been really helpful in setting this all up for us and making this happen. So in this video, I'm going to be focusing on one of the hops that I've got to try out, which is CF383. It's going to be going into a lager, so you can find out more about all of this if you go and check out the podcast, which again I'll link in the description. But basically I'm getting 2 of the varieties, and with one of them, this one, I'm doing a lager, and with the other one I'm going to be doing a hazy beer, so there'll be a separate video on that one. But for today's video, I'm going to focus on this variety and the beer that I make with it. So the lager that I'm going to be brewing is based off of this grist that you can see up on the screen here. This is a standard kind of grist that my colleague from the podcast, Chris, likes to use for his hoppy lagers. So we're all going to be brewing that same base recipe with the different hops in it and see how they come up. And yeah, as you can see, decent whack of Vienna in there and Pilsner malt and a little bit of Carapils. Nice and simple, but a good little bit of kind of sweetness and malt character in there from the Vienna. We're going to be fermenting it out with Einstein yeast. So again, just want a really nice, clean, crisp, hop-friendly kind of lager yeast, which Einstein is definitely good for that. So I'll put a link to the recipe in the description. But as you can see, brewing it with my usual sort of process, we were mashing fairly low with the lager, so 65 degrees for the mash. For the lagers, we were provided with 200 grams of each hop to go into a standard kind of 23 litre batch. So a really decent amount of hops there, especially bearing in mind that it's a lager that we're going to be doing it with. We've got a little bit more for the hazy beers. But the way we've broken that up with the lager is to essentially use 100 grams in the boil, kind of spread out through the boil. They are going to be obviously single hopped beers, so we're using the hops for the bittering addition and then progressively through the boil and with a decent quantity in the whirlpool as well. So you can see the quantities for that in the hop schedule on the screen, and a full 100 grams saved over for the dry hop. So you get the idea. Let's get this packet open and see what we get from these hops. Now, I've not really stuck my nose into the bag yet, but I can already get a really pungent aroma off of these coming out of the bag. So yeah, these are quite aromatic. I mean, yeah, it's difficult to say without having them next to each other, but I would say this is right up there with some of the most kind of pungent and aromatic kind of English varieties that I've had experience with up to this point. And I've got to say, it's very reminiscent of a kind of American sea hop type aroma on there. If I was going into this completely blind, I would probably be thinking it's kind of a more traditional sort of American sea hop. There's not that kind of typical kind of earthy, grassy, maybe floral kind of English hop aroma. This is definitely citrus dominated. So I'm just going to rub a couple in my hand. So there's a little bit more of a kind of sweeter sort of citrus note in there. Maybe some kind of like mandarin, tangerine type notes, but I'm still thinking kind of cascade, maybe a little bit of a piney sort of Chinook type aroma on there. Yeah, zesty, kind of pithy, probably a bit of grapefruit in there. It smells really promising, so very pungent, very citrus led, maybe a little bit of a floral note in there as well. I mean, out of the bag, very good. That doesn't always indicate it's going to carry over into the beer, but you know, so far so good. So I'm going to get on with brewing with these hops, and obviously we're going to come back for a tasting. I'll taste this beer individually and give you my thoughts on here. I'll also give you the information that we generate and the data we generate from the podcast, where we're all going to do a group tasting, but also scoring the beers so we can generate some graphs for flavour profile. So I'm going to get brewing, and when I come back, we'll be at the point where we've got a beer to taste, and then we'll have some extra content from the podcast as well, which you should definitely go and watch the full episode for that, and see all of the other beers and all the other varieties and see which ones we think are going to be the next kind of big hitter as far as English hops go. Maybe it's going to be CF383. Let's find out. So folks, here we are. This is CF383 in the lager kind of testing format that we have done for the podcast. This is actually the evening before the podcast, so you'll see some of the content from the pod and all the data that's going to be gathered from that very shortly. But I wanted to taste the beer kind of individually before that and get my viewpoints down, and really kind of see what I think of it before there's the potential to kind of be influenced by the tasting notes and views that we're going to get from other people. So I'm going to be tasting it for this video, and then we'll get to the podcast itself later and all of the graphs that are generated and so on from that for the tastings. So about the beer itself, I was a little bit under in terms of the efficiency. So in the end, this one came out a little bit lower on the ABV than I was expecting. We got a 4.3%. 4.3% beer. This has been in the keg for just over a month. I did hit it with a cheeky little dose of Browsol, so got some really good clarity on it. The Browsol obviously helped a little bit with that. But the beer itself has come out looking really pretty good. Lovely sort of deep kind of honey colour to it. I think getting a nice bit of colour on this beer from the Vienna malt in there. So let's talk about this hop and what I think of it. Aroma, first of all. I'm still getting the same kind of first impression from this that I have from very early on testing it out, which is that there's a very kind of, initially, a very kind of weedy, slightly dank kind of herbal note on there, very much a kind of, weed, basically. So there's a definite weed character on it. There's also a very distinct kind of resiny, classic kind of sea hop character there. That kind of piney, resiny aroma. There's not a huge amount of fruitiness, I wouldn't say. What's jumping out at me is that this would, if I didn't know what it was or where it was from, I would kind of be going, well, that smells like it's got something like a classic American sea hop, perhaps with the dankness that's there, something like a Columbus maybe, or perhaps a little bit of Chinook. There's maybe a little bit of a kind of piffy sort of grapefruit note, little bit of citrus in there too, which again would be the sort of thing you'd expect with the sea hops, but mainly for me it's that kind of like piney, resinous, almost sticky kind of aroma, and the kind of dank sort of weedy smell to it. So bit of herbal in there, definitely piney, woody, kind of resiny. The big headline for this one so far with me is it's got some real sort of classic American sea hop kind of West Coast character to it on the aroma. So let's get in to the beer and give it a taste. Not so much West Coast in the sense of the bitterness. The bitterness on this is very smooth and quite well rounded. It's not a particularly high IBU on this beer anyway, so you wouldn't necessarily expect that, but it doesn't have that kind of like spiky bitterness that you might expect from some of the comparative kind of American hops that I've just talked about. So if you're using something like a Chinook, which has got quite a high cohumulone content to it, you might expect a slightly more brash or aggressive kind of bitterness to it. What do we get flavour wise? Coming back to the kind of resiny, piney thing there, and a little bit of that kind of weedy. I mean, I wouldn't say it kind of doesn't taste like weed, because you don't drink weed, do you? But there's some definite kind of herbal character there, I think. It has got that sticky resin kind of piney flavour as well. A little bit more of the grapefruit. So there's definitely a sort of pithy grapefruit character. I think actually maybe bitterness wise you get a little bit more of the bitterness coming through on the back end with it, which is where you get that sort of like pithy citrus flavour. It's not throwing out sort of big tropical kind of fruit flavours to me. It's not getting any sort of like mango, pineapple, or any of that kind of stuff that you might expect with things like your kind of Citras and Mosaics and Nelson. Very much leaning more towards the sort of old school American kind of hop character. Maybe a hint of spiciness to it. It does have a kind of like, again, the bitterness is not really there to fully hit this kind of flavour profile, but it does have a bit of a kind of like West Coast Pilsner sort of character to it. But yeah, there's quite a few things going on with this one. It's quite a complex flavour, but very much more towards, for me, the kind of pithy citrus, so not really bright sort of fruity citrus, so more of pithy citrus flavour with some piney resiny notes to it. I think a lot of people, if you gave this to them blind, would probably guess that it was something like a Chinook or a Columbus, or not so much Cascade, because I think maybe you get a bit more of a bright kind of grapefruit flavour, but perhaps people would think it might be something like that. It is very enjoyable. I think it just throws you a little bit because you're kind of like thinking UK hop, probably aiming to be more like these kind of fruity modern New World and American hops. But this is kind of, really going more back to kind of like old school American hop kind of in terms of comparison for me, which is really interesting. So yeah, potentially something that could be used in those more kind of bitterness forward West Coast sort of styles, West Coast IPAs, West Coast Pilsners, and your more kind of like Sierra Nevada style American pale ales rather than the modern sort of hazy versions. Not sure I would see this working as well in perhaps, hazy beers and things like that. It'll be interesting to see how the beer has come out that has been done with this as a hazy. So I think Owen has got the hazy version for this hop. Hopefully it will be nice, obviously, but just based off of tasting this beer, it wouldn't be one that I'd immediately go, oh yeah, put that into a hazy IPA and it's going to be great. So yeah, I'm going to kind of do my scores for this now prior to the podcast and put those in. But the headlines for me would be, old school sea hop character, piney resinous, bit of a kind of weedy, dank kind of aroma on it as well. Pithy citrus flavour, West Coast, baby. So yeah, let's see what the other guys think about it, and then we'll come back with kind of more detailed results at the end.
It's a good beer.
I think I started to get the impression that you shared earlier of a specific region of the world where this hop might originate.
This is a really, really, really interesting beer and a really, really interesting hop.
Better suited for the lager, do you think? Oh, it's dank for days.
It is dank. It smells like weed. I'll be honest. It smells like weed. It's got that dank thing going off.
It is dank, but it's not onion and garlic dank.
No, it's not. It's
weedy dank.
It's weedy dank. Yeah, I like it. I like it a lot.
I mean, one of the comments that came out last time we did this and tasted this was, there was that woody, piney resinousness on like the West Coast, but then kind of like when it was the East Coast, it's kind of like that pear, and almost actually this would be really suited to like a saison or something Belgian-y.
Same.
Really interesting.
So there we go. It did seem like there was some fairly consistent feedback there on the main kind of flavour and aroma descriptors. And if we look at the results from the questionnaire where we graph that out, you can see that on the screen now. With the aroma on this one, the highest scoring category was pine, and that was followed by herbal. So I didn't have a distinct category for dank or weedy, so I think a lot of people went for herbal in the absence of that. And citrus was the next highest scoring after that. In terms of the flavour scoring, we had citrus leading the way there. So that was the highest scoring, closely followed by pine. And after that, tropical and herbal descriptors scoring very close together. We also had floral as a fairly high scoring category there. Looking at the scores for aroma and flavour potency, those both were relatively high. So we got 6.625 on aroma, and flavour came out at a 7. And the overall kind of preference score or enjoyment score for this hop came out at 7.25. So it was fairly well received as well. Finally, I put together a bit of a word cloud using the descriptors that people added at the end of the survey. And you can see on there, the most common ones which came up were resin, dank, citrus and floral, amongst a range of other descriptors that you can see on the diagram there. So that was CF383. I think it's a really interesting hop, definitely brings something a little bit new to the kind of UK hop scene, certainly in terms of that kind of like West Coast character. Remains to be seen whether or not it will make it through to being a full commercial variety, but for more on how that's going to work and whether that's likely to happen, make sure you do go and check out the full podcast episode to hear all about that kind of stuff from Will and John from Charles Faram. So if you've enjoyed this, make sure you go and hit the buttons, you know what to do, and drop a comment in below. Let me know what you think about UK hops and where you want to see them going. And if any of you out there have been lucky enough to try any of these experimental varieties, tell me about your experiences with them as well. Cheers everyone, and look out for the next video on CF383.
I'm the dude, so that's what you call me, you know? That or his dudeness or duder or, you know, El Duderino if you're not into the whole brevity thing.